With other Eurosceptic movements swelling in Europe, the British exit from the EU is likely to have a profound impact on the Union itself. Heath is the senior EU correspondent at Politico. He joins me from Brussels. Great to have you with us. There are other countries considering following suit, like right-wing groups in France, in the Netherlands, in Austria and Germany. What does the EU need to do?
The EU needs to really get a grip on the fact that these movements are coordinating now. There's been a new report out just in the last couple of days from the European Council on Foreign Relations that's analysed for the first time around 45 of these different parties. And it's very clear that they're all mobilising around the tactic of referenda. They do also all coordinate on other issues, and the next one coming up will be the reaction to Russia sanctions, for example. They're much more pro-Putin than other mainstream parties are, and they're going to keep the pressure up on their governments. So what the EU needs to do is really make sure that it is talking to its national governments, the 28 member states, or soon to be 27, on a much more regular basis, and to make sure that they are willing to stand up. Because if you give in to those sorts of narratives, as it were, you end up looking like a cheap version of those populists. I think that's what the track record is showing. So if they want to really roll back the tide, they're going to have to come up with another form of language, and they can only do it by talking more with each other in order to come up with those positions.
Do you think the UK exiting the EU will diminish the role or the prestige of the European Union?
Yes, it will at some level make it more cohesive, because the UK has often been a brake on the EU moving further forward the way that a majority of governments would like to do. But at the end of the day, if you take out more than 10% of the population, close to 20% of the economy, the closest ally of the United States, then of course you're going to be smaller. You'll have a smaller footprint on the world stage. And the only thing the EU can do now is really try and leverage the extra cohesiveness that can come out of the UK stepping aside. And it will be up to countries like Ireland to turn this massive threat of the UK pulling out into somewhat of an opportunity. So they need to suck in some of those finance companies, some of those tech companies into Dublin. If Scotland chooses to stay on, they need to hope that some of those companies also move up north rather than to Frankfurt or to Paris. And that's going to be the only way forward, because the real big broader picture is that the EU is diminished as a result of this vote.
We've heard a few different arguments for the timing of how quickly the Britain should exit the EU. A lot of the foreign ministers who met today in the EU want it to happen very quickly. We heard from Germany's Chancellor, who said, you know, it has to take some time. What do you think the 27 remaining EU countries will want for the future of the Union?
Well, what they want and what they can get are probably two different things, Lynda, and this is where I have to be a bit of a reality check, I would say. At the end of the day, this is probably going to take a minimum of 3 years. The treaty foresees a 2-year process, but what we're really talking about here are some big logistical problems. There's more than 100,000 pages of laws that the UK has embedded into their national legal system. Those don't extricate themselves, so you need a lot of lawyers. Just the trade aspects alone, there aren't enough trade lawyers in the world to make this happen in 6 or 12 months. So 2 years is extremely optimistic. What there is a political pressure where, if you consider the next round of European elections for the European Parliament and for appointing the next commission, they come around in 2019. So that gives around about 3 years. That's a realistic pressure point. It's a really good thing to aim at. If everyone could sort of mobilize around that, throw as many resources as they can at the problem, maybe you can resolve it by 2019. But if you just went at a steady pace, or if you hit the rocks, we could be looking at 5 or 6 years here, and that is clearly not good for markets. It's clearly going to be politically frustrating to all of those people who really want the UK out, and it just leaves everyone in a big uncertain mess.
Yep, it's going to be very long and drawn out. Heath, great to have your perspective on all of that. Thank you very much.